Hi, this is the first time I've really talked directly to camera, but it's by no means my first video on the channel, so I'm gonna skip the whole first video ramble and just get straight into it. I want to talk about bowls and paper today. This is a tool that was first introduced to me by a YouTuber named Bashew in one of his videos that will be linked in one of the corners above. Thank you, Z, so much for opening my eyes to this. And in general, I think that it is a tool that every game master should have in their repertoire, no matter the type of game that they're running or which TTRPG it's in. I think this fits pretty well into almost anything. So I'm going to be talking about two of the ways that Z described that he uses this, as well as my own third personal way that I used it, at least in the last in-person campaign that I ran. The first way is using it to build the party. So generally what you do is you have every character or every player take two slips of paper and they write down a prompt on them and then put them back into the bucket. Now, what's going to be on these prompts, you might ask? Well, I have a general template as well as some examples to help you get the idea. The general template is my character and your character had an experience together. Give some additional information. That's it. So, some examples. My character and your character got drunk and shared secrets. What was yours? Your character came to my character for advice about something. What was it? My character saw your character coming out of a dark alley last month. What were you doing? My character and your character share an odd common interest. What is it? So, these sorts of things are going to help connect your players. Before the game even starts, there should be like session 0 type stuff. And that way you build this sort of shared fiction between all of the characters and help really knit them together. It kind of solves the characters that don't prep quite enough backstory, as well as fleshing out character interests, character personalities, and it really shows what people are interested in this campaign in general. That'll a lot of times come out in the prompts. The only thing to make sure is that the person who writes the original prompt signs it so that you know who it's between. It's the person who signed it and came up with the prompt as well as the person that drew it. When you're doing this, your group can come up with some different configurations of how to do it. In one campaign, we had it to where if you already answered a prompt from a person, you couldn't answer their prompt again. So it made sure to kind of spread out the web. If you don't mind the web being clustered occasionally, if that's more desirable, you want maybe deeper relationships, you can certainly make rules around that. In general, I would say that the minimum number of prompts is 2, but if you guys are really into the idea, you can go 3, 4 even, and just do, an entire hour or 2 of answering these prompts and getting really deep, tight relationships going into the campaign. The next example from Z's video is what I would call the travel montage use case. It is where basically you get this idea of boons and banes. So a boon is something written on here that is something good. A boon would be like a +1 axe or, a secret piece of information. That's a boon. A bane is anything bad. There's an obstruction in your way. There's 3 zombies. There is a sinkhole. I don't know. One of the wheels on your wagon breaks. These are all banes. So, to set up any travel montage, what you do is you as the DM write down 4 banes and you put them in the bucket. After you put them in, you tell all the players, hey, you guys can write your own boons and banes to go in here. However, you have to submit them in pairs. So, if you submit a boon, you have to submit a bane, and they should be of about equal impact. The impact can be as high or as low as the players want. They just have to be the same, and they have to be submitted in pairs. So, I have some example. You could write like a feral direwolf versus a friendly dog companion. A +1 sword versus zombies. An ogre den versus a traveling peddler/vendor. A minor clue towards the grand arc with an embarrassment that makes traveling dignitaries think less of us. The only important thing here is that the table agrees that the impacts are similar. So, you might notice that if they just go into the travel montage and they don't submit anything, then they're just guaranteed to get bans on the way there that you came up with. This is generally similar to how most travel montages already go, so if they're really not feeling creative that day, it'll be pretty similar to their normal. However, if they want to lessen the likelihood of getting a bane, they can start submitting these pairs. And so for every pair that they submit, it brings the likelihood closer and closer to 50-50. It starts at 100% that they'll get a bane, and the more they submit, the more likely it is to be 50-50. Now, this also, again, really brings in some player engagement because you start to see what the characters value. People that really want magic items are going to put those down, and they're a lot of times going to be more combat focused, so they might put those in. Whereas your more politically minded players are going to put in clues, rest stops, contacts, and they'll be afraid of losing those things as well. So you really get a good mix or just a good direction for the campaign to go in. The really great part about this is that the players shape all of it. So no matter what, the banes and boons are going in a direction that at least one of the players wants. This is also a really great way for players to indirectly ask you for things. So if someone really wants a broom of flying, they can put it on here and it goes in and they might get it. Now, the last thing is one of my own creation. This kind of goes away from what Z was describing in his video. It's something I call the rumor mill. It's a little bit more complicated than the other two, but stick with me. I tried it out a lot and my players loved it. I loved running it. So just hear me out. After any kind of noteworthy event, this could be a battle in a field outside of a city. This could be an argument in the marketplace. This could be an assignment of a quest from the king. Any notable event that could foreseeably have an observer creates a rumor. Now, a rumor is a single piece of paper, but the party will agree on two interpretations of what transpired. So they will all agree together, and with you as the DM, on a favorable viewing where, the observer is interpreting the events positively towards the party, or they're being as generous as they can be about those events. The other side is a negative or more critical view of those events. They're being as critical or as negative as is reasonable. And you want to make sure that these two interpretations are fairly equal in terms of impact. They would make someone think as good as they would bad on the other side. So once you have a rumor, you put it into the pot and it stays there. It stays there between sessions. That's important. Now, whenever the PCs are interacting with an NPC at any point in the future, the DM can decide that maybe the NPC has heard of them or has some reason to have heard of them. And they draw a rumor out of the bucket. Now, you can either do something like a coin flip, or if you're using dice, you can do some sort of dice arrangement that gives you a 50-50 shot of what you're going to roll on this piece of paper. If we're using the D20, 11 and above would be the positive, and 10 and below would be the negative. And you have any of your players roll it, and that is what the NPC is going into this conversation with, is either the positive or the negative version of this rumor. Now, all the NPCs do acknowledge them to be rumors, but that'll still affect how they view the PCs. Now, the alternate version of this is once per session, the PCs can ask about any other NPC, have they heard of us? So again, this is only once per session, but that immediately triggers a rumor check, and it goes on the exact same way that I described earlier. Now, after the rumor is pulled, the players collectively decide, do we want that rumor to go back into the basket, or do we just want to throw it away? It's totally up to them. They can choose to either put it back in or toss it. And I have an alternate rule. I've used it in one campaign, haven't used it in the other, where if they choose to put it back in, the rumor gains a modifier. If that NPC knew the negative version of the rumor itself gains a -1 modifier when they put it back in. If the NPC got the positive version, it gets a +1. This is basically to simulate the rumor kind of spreading in this negative or positive direction. And so then the next time that they pull it out, that -1 or +1 will be applied to the D20 roll. Obviously, that doesn't really work if you use a coin, but it's totally up to you how you want to run it at the table. And those are the 3 ways that I use a bull and some paper to try and increase player engagement and take some planning off of me. And these 3 things that I described, you can use them in a variety of ways. The travel montage, for example, that works for downtime. That works for traveling through a city. Really, the only thing you have to agree on is how often are you going to pull these. Your players might want to pull a boon and bane anytime they go from location to location inside the city. It leads to a very action-packed game, or they might want to say, hey, we only want it for travel montages and we're going to pull one once a day. It really depends on the type of game you're running, but the general tool is so useful for so many things. Even that party building aspect, you can do a single prompt every single downtime. And that's something that I have done where at the end of every downtime, everyone puts in a prompt and everyone draws a prompt. And it is something that occurred during that downtime. It really fleshes out the relationships and allows for some players to really show off their creativity. If you have any ideas for maybe some other uses of this general system, leave them down in the comments. And if you liked my video, please subscribe. It would mean the world to me. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Peace.